Welcome back once again to Souhan Unfiltered at SouhanUnfiltered.com. We are live at O'Gara's Bar and Grill on a Friday night. Gopher Hockey is just about to start off. They're playing one of those other Minnesota teams. There are only 85 Minnesota teams in the field this year. My guest tonight, Bob Sansevere. If you can access this and all other podcasts. This is our 56th podcast already.
Wow.
Via iTunes. Subscribe for free, and they'll send it to you. iHeartRadio, or simply go to SouhanUnfiltered.com. Bob works for 105.1 The Ticket. He has me on afternoons at 3:30 on weekday afternoons. We have a lot of fun with that. And we get to go a little more, as they say, unfiltered, uncensored in this format. I want to thank some of my sponsors, Cara Irish Pubs, including the Liffey, Kieran's, and the Local. I want to thank Guinness, which I am drinking right now. Minnesota Eye Consultants, a new sponsor that we properly introduced last night with Anna Miller coming by and telling us about that business. We also have a major sponsor announcement to make in the very near future, even though I might be on vacation next week. I might still be doing some shows from Vegas. You know, me doing shows from Vegas, doesn't that sound like the sad kind of thing Sammy Davis Jr. would say or something?
Well, if you do shows from Vegas, I will put you in touch with Kelly in Vegas, who is phenomenal. She's been on with us for a while.
Kelly in Vegas is phenomenal?
No, Kelly in Vegas does. She is one of the. She knows as much about the NBA, college basketball, and NFL.
Well, who is she? Who is Kelly in Vegas?
Kelly in Vegas. It's at Kelly in Vegas.
So
on
not a
Twitter.
stripper.
No, but you need to call her Kelly in Vegas. Just type into your computer, Kelly in Vegas. Kelly is phenomenal. She knows sports. She does. She gives advice on betting. And she was on with us 2 years ago when Mike Morris and I were there. I was with the KQ Morning Show and The Ticket. We went live. And then this past year she was with us. She's on with me at least once a week on The Ticket, and she's terrific. Last week, Fox Sports 1 did a show from Vegas several nights. They asked her for the first night. They had to come back for every night because she's great. She has this great voice, like it's a deep, smoky voice. And I even said to her, so how many packs of cigarettes do you put away? She's never had a cigarette in her life. She said when she was 13, the doctor said to her mom, you really need to get her off the cigarettes. But she doesn't smoke. I mean, she has this really, it's a great voice, and she's incredibly knowledgeable. And her photo, she's a big KU fan, she'd kill me if I said KU, big K-State fan. So she has photos of her with a very tight, body-hugging K-State jersey on. And let's just say Kelly in Vegas is very easy on the eyes. But if you're out there, I will put you in touch with her because she's a great guest. She knows everything about sports as much as anyone can know about the number of sports that are out there. She knows.
Well, we're going to get to a lot of sports, but I talk about this. I'm going to Vegas next week. I've been to Vegas a few times, always with a business connection. And I'm not a gambler, so I've never really dived into that stuff. This is like really the first time I'm going to Vegas on purpose for a vacation, a week-long vacation.
Where are you staying? Have you picked your spot yet?
It's like a timeshare type deal. It's like a Hilton Garden thingy,
so
vacation club kind of thing.
How far from the Strip?
Not a fairly short walk.
Oh, well, that's pretty good then.
Yeah, it's fine. It's going to be good. And I don't think we really need to be. We're not really partiers. I don't think we need to be in the middle of the Strip. And we like walking, so I think it'll be fine. And we'll use the monorail cab if we ever want to wear if I want to wear my heels. Then.
Well, as you know, the food is terrific there. Great restaurants.
Yeah. Well, every great chef has a restaurant there.
Yeah, and the buffets, you can't go wrong with those. They're open around the clock.
Buffets creep me out. It's like a personal phobia of mine. All this food sitting out there in the open for hours and people kind of leaning over. I know I'm sounding like an old person. That's because I'm an old person. I'm not sure. I just don't like buffets.
Put it this way. If there's something I like, that's not sitting out there for long because I'm going to be hitting it. I hit that. I like hitting. If the pizza's good, I'm taking that, and I'll take just about any one of their shrimp dishes.
Yeah, well, I'm big on shrimp. I will go with that, too. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. And we're either going next week on the podcast network, Alive and Social Network, and the SouhanUnfiltered.com show, we're either going to be running some interviews I did in spring training with some great people, or Michael Russo is going to sub for me, or a combination of the two. We're going to do something like that. So we will be running podcasts all of the next 2 weeks. By the way, I'm going from, how about this? Not a shitty life. I'm going from here to Vegas for a week, vacation.
Not Augusta.
Then to Twins opening day in Detroit, and then to Augusta.
Oh, my God, that's great.
That ain't bad.
That's not, the Detroit part, but still, it's the opener, so that's
But it's the opening.
Good.
And you know what? I like that stadium. I like that ballpark. I like opening day. I love baseball. And I've gone from maybe I'm softening my old age because I used to make fun of how bad Detroit was. Now I feel for Detroit. Now I look at it and go, God, this used to be this great American city, and look how desolate it is. And I actually pull for Detroit teams now because if you live in downtown Detroit, you need that bolstering your life.
Well, and you know what? If you happen to have a $20 bill in your pocket, you can buy 6 or 7 houses.
Well, it's sad. I mean, it's both funny and true and sad. I remember I was there to do a story on a Gopher women's basketball recruit once. I covering the Twins. I stayed over on a Monday after a weekend series or something to go do a story on this young lady. And so I went to the Motown house where
where
it all started, where they recorded in the basement and did all that stuff. And you think Motown house, big deal. It's in one of those neighborhoods where all the houses are falling apart. That looks like Beirut.
And shuttered.
And it's kind of become a museum now. But it's not a big house. It's a fairly small house. And you can see how modest the beginnings of Motown and great American music were. But, yeah, it's in a neighborhood that has just fallen completely apart. And it's to me, it's one of the saddest stories in American life that Detroit collapsed or was allowed to collapse the way it did.
Well, a lot of cities are actually teetering. I mean, it happened to them, but there's a lot of them that are going bankrupt, and they could have that same fate at some point.
Well, but there's a difference between paper bankrupt, where, okay, it doesn't really affect the quality of life of the average citizen. It's just the government or the people, local billionaires aren't doing well. I traveled all these cities extensively, and most American cities are better now than they ever have been. New York's better. Minneapolis is better. St. Paul is better. San Francisco's better. San Diego's better. Los Angeles is better. Baltimore's better. And then you go to Detroit, and it's like, I can't even say they've been set back 200 years because 200 years ago, they had no expectations of grandeur.
It was probably pretty good then, 200 years ago.
Now it's horrible. Now it's like a third world country in the middle of the Midwest.
Well, and there were probably a confluence of issues, the economy and what happened to the auto industry is what destroyed it.
No question. Yeah.
But there were a lot. I mean, that you add that to all the other issues that were happening economically. By the way, you mentioned Minnesota Eye Consultants as one of your sponsors.
Yes.
They gave me, because I did years ago, I had laser vision surgery.
Yes.
They gave 2012 and 2015 vision. And it's held pretty good since.
So you went
to
Minnesota Eye?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
They were there
That's awesome. They're our newest sponsor. Again, we have another major sponsor being announced next week. And mneye.com is the website if you want to check out their information. Or go to SouhanUnfiltered.com. Listen to episode 55, I believe it was, Michael Russo from the Liffey Irish Pub last night, and we had Anna on and we talked about all that. The great part of that is Russo once actually jumped off an operating table right before Dr. Samuelson went to work. And he says it was because there was news breaking someplace. We're just all calling him a chicken right now.
Yeah, I'm sure it was news.
Yeah.
No, actually, they also did, because I paid the price, and for young ones out there, wear sunglasses in the sun. I grew up at the Jersey Shore, and I never wore them. And I paid the price in my I might still be in my 40s or early 50s. I had cataract surgery, and they did that too, and they did a great job with it. Because it was, I could wonder, why is my eyesight suddenly getting bad? So they had to do that, and they do a wonderful job with all types of eye surgeries. I got LASIK from it, and later the cataract surgery. So it's I can't speak about them any higher than I do. They do a wonderful job. As a matter of fact, my sister and mother both came out from Jersey. My sister for LASIK surgery or laser eye surgery, and my mother had cataract surgery. And it was weird seeing this little old lady who'd worn glasses most of her life walking around without glasses.
Yeah,
it was weird for her.
Absolutely.
And the other good thing about, not that I'm promoting you to get cataract surgery, a lot of people, now Jim, do you wear reading glasses?
I don't, and maybe I should start.
Well, I did, and I haven't worn them since I had the cataract surgery because I have it so that one eye is just off enough that I don't need to worry about it. Anyway, enough about that. Enough about my bad peepers.
You brought this up before we came on the air here, and I wasn't ever going to really ask about it. I figured it was your personal business. But, you mentioned your departure from the KQ Morning Show.
You son of a bitch. I can't believe you're bringing it up.
I know, which is, obviously a monster show, and you had a lot to do with the success.
27 years, yeah.
27 years. You were there when I got here in town, which is a long stinking time ago. I'll just let you talk about it. What happened?
Well, the thing that's a lot of people, there's been a lot of text to me and stuff on Facebook, and the thing I want to make clear about it, I had a great time for 27 years on the morning show. I'm still part of the Cumulus family. I'm still on with 105 The Ticket, and people wonder, well, what did Tom? And Tom had, it was a corporate decision. Tom is he's one of the people that I consider, a good friend for 27 years, and I will continue to do that. He's been great to me. I mean, a lot of the things that I've had, the successes that I've had, I couldn't have had if not for Tom. Personal successes, being on that morning show, and he was the reason I was on it. And I think the world of Tom. And he gave my daughter an opportunity right after she got out of high school that September. She wanted to show horses, so she decided she was going to take a year off from school, but she needed a job, and Tom hired her to answer phones for his podcast, and that led to her producing a couple of podcasts, and then she did some stuff. She answered phones at KQ, and then she did some production work at 105 The Ticket, and now, just this week, she started as the morning show producer at AM 1130, the old KFAN.
Wow.
That's now their K-Talk thing. And, I mean, it's great. She's still a teenager, and she's got a great job. And, what led to her getting that is Tom Bernard giving her a chance with his podcast. And, so he's had an impact on my life and on my daughter's life and obviously on my family's life. And we talked briefly about this, too, about how soccer impacted my life. And when we were on, I was making fun of, and I still would, but about the 3 billionaire owners better not coming with their hat in hand saying we need a stadium. But as I'm taking some pot shots, my wife sends me a text saying, "Lay off soccer. I was on the Strikers dance line, and it was a lot of fun." And then she posted a video that another former dance line member put out, and she talked about how if it wasn't for being on the Strikers, she probably wouldn't have had the background and experience to become a Vikings cheerleader, which she was for 8 years, and she also was the very first Pro Bowl selection from when they first picked Pro Bowls cheerleaders. She was the very first one. And before that, though, the Vikings went to Sweden.
God, did you overmarry?
Göteborg. Yes, I did. I outpunted my coverage. But we went to Gothenburg, the way we say it here, but Göteborg there. And that's where I met her when the Vikings played in 1988 against the Chicago Bears in Sweden. And the thing that to me is, and people are always intrigued by the fact that we lived in the same apartment complex and never met, but we met in Sweden.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, I know it is.
I think I knew that, but I had forgotten that.
But the point is, if it wasn't for soccer, which led to football, which led to us meeting, so I guess I wrote a blog the other day about that, and I said thanks to soccer because I wouldn't have met her if not for that. Now, admittedly, I mean, for people out there that are married and have girlfriends, there's some days when you don't thank it as much as you do others, but overall I'm saying thank you to soccer.
You just addressed all those people who are married and have girlfriends. You're talking to professional athletes.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
There's plenty of that going on.
Absolutely. One of the keys, and I've heard this from people within local sports organizations, I won't make it any more specific than that to protect the innocent and the guilty, but one key for people inside local sports organizations is, as they say, you got to make sure that the mistresses are not sitting in the same section as the wives.
Well, that'd be a problem.
Yeah, you got to get tickets. There are two different sets of tickets, and you don't want them to be juxtaposed, let us say.
Well, that was I mentioned to you on the ticket earlier when we were on about the Billy Martin book I'm reading that Bill Pennington from the New York Times wrote, and he gets into that quite a bit with Billy Martin and the number of girlfriends and women he had around and how their traveling secretary, he took care of all the players. This went, it was rampant with the Yankees. Back when Billy Martin was the manager, even in the 50s.
Make that a shorter sentence, just say it was rampant.
Well, yeah, it was rampant with all teams. But that's a hell of a job to have, that you're the guy who has to make sure. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of responsibility. You screw up and you're dead.
Well, there's a very prominent, I'll just say his name. Sam Cassell was known for carrying around a large mesh bag of burner phones. What could he be using all those different phones for in every NBA city he goes to? A large mesh bag of burner phones.
I hope that he had like one of those label makers, so he had the right name of the right city.
I have no doubt he had a system. I have no doubt he had a system.
Yeah, that would. You
also, when he ran up the court, kind of holding his the family jewels, I think it's because they were sore.
Well, you could wear those things out.
Yeah,
so I've heard.
Oh, good Lord.
But anyway, yeah, soccer. Thanks a lot, soccer.
It's still good.
I mean it in a good way. Thank you very much, soccer.
Now, I wrote a column the other day about the new MLS team saying, I've never been a big soccer guy. I don't have anything against it, I'm sometimes entertained by it, but I'm not a diehard. But even for somebody with that perspective, you look around Minneapolis, you look at the demographics, you look at all the people, young people moving downtown, all the new buildings going up, either near the Viking Stadium or away from the Viking Stadium. The greater diversity with, you see different kinds of people, different skin colors, hear different languages. I think soccer's going to be a hit down there.
Well, and that's what I think that gives them their best chance for getting money for a stadium is someone coming up and saying, wait a minute, we're so diverse here. We have all these groups of people who, in their native country, soccer was number one. We have got to do this for them, and you know that they will wind up being political pawns. The people who've come from other countries and where soccer was a big deal.
Possibly, but here's my view on the stadium thing. And we always end up getting caught in the same tired arguments and the same tired conversations every time any stadium issue comes up. You can't pay billionaire. This is the way the world works, and this is different in that other stadium issues, the owners either really can't afford to. Nobody wants to hear that, but they really can't afford to take the family vaults, empty them to buy a stadium, or they just won't because that's not the way they operate as business people. This is different. They're going to ask for public money, and some politicians are going to be favorable. But if it doesn't come to be, they're just going to build it themselves. And
they're going to go through hoping they get it. But we talked about this the other day too. Where else do you have 3 billionaire owners of a team, and not a team that you need $1 billion to build?
No,
it's the 100 to 200, and you know it's going to be the 200 million. Probably, maybe closer to 100 if they build it themselves.
Right. It's not.
But they will get help.
They're going to ask for help. Some people are going to be sympathetic to that. Probably Mike Opat leading the charge, because that's kind of his thing, and I kind of admire him for sticking his neck out. And if they don't get the money, they're still going to build it, but they're going to ask. They're business people. They're looking for the best possible deal.
Well, but where they'll get help is from the city, is in some tax breaks.
Land.
But the key is that they get, and people will be watching because there are watchdog groups, that they don't get anything that another corporation would not get. If they get what other companies get, I don't have an issue with it. Because you do get breaks when you come in as a company or a corporation to build something.
And let's be honest, sports are different. People want to compare them to 3M, but nobody goes to the parking lot of 3M and watches people type on computers. These are things to do in our town. These bring people to our town. I don't ever buy into the pure economic argument that, you create this many jobs and you bring in this much money. Well, not really. Those things are always overinflated. Those jobs might have been, those people who went to work there might have ended up working someplace else. The number of dollars spent there might have been spent someplace else. So I don't buy that argument. But Minneapolis-St. Paul is a cool place, in large part, in my view, because you have so much to do. You have 4 major sporting teams. You have a Big Ten university with all the major sports. You have theater. You have a great music scene. You have the lakes. You have art. That's why it's a great place, because you have all these opportunities. It's the old definition of quality of life. It's how many options do you have when you walk out your front door, and this is another option.
Well, going back to one of the things you said, though, having coached youth soccer,
yep,
I think I'd rather watch the people in the 3M parking lot try. Because that was you coached it too, right?
I coached a lot of youth soccer,
and I think I told you. I keep referring to it but Jim and I are on every day on the ticket at 3:30. I had a stopwatch, and it was my job. I made sure no kid was on a second or two longer than any other kid. Every kid had. I mean, we had kids running off. It was like hockey, where you just send in a new line. Because I did not want to have one parent or one kid bitch about their little baby not being on the. And these kids were, this was young, kindergarten, first grade, and my God, they were those hours or 2 hours was some of the longest months of my life.
So tell me about. We are going to get to the Vikings and Peterson and all that stuff here in a little bit. Tell me about living on a farm, living the farm life. You're not just somebody who has there are some rich people who.
No, we're not rich.
Who own a farm but don't really farm or do anything on the land. They just like being isolated. You own a farm.
It's basically a horse farm. We have horses, and we board horses too. And sometimes I feel like Oliver Douglas from Green Acres, because we have a little John Deere tractor that my 17-year-old son. He will not give the keys up because he wants to be the one driving it, because he's obsessive compulsive about that, and he is the only one that will deliver the hay to the horses. And my wife gets mad at him because sometimes he doesn't want to do it when she wants him to. But it's we've got, and I've talked to you this before. We have miniature horses and ponies and full size horses, and we got into. People wonder, why do you have these minis? Well, my wife Mary, she used to work for a company, and they had it was based in Jamaica, and she had to go to a national meeting, and they have those wooden steps, and she basically they had to wear heels, and she got it caught for a breakfast meeting we've been on a boardwalk. There's spaces.
Yes.
Well, she went tumbling down the stairs and broke her neck. Oh. Now, and when I say broke her neck, not that she was not at the point where she was, she needed a wheelchair, but she was told when she went to see a surgeon, if you don't have this corrected or have surgery, you could lose movement of your legs.
Wow.
So, she was risking that. So she basically had 2 screws put in with cadaver bone into her neck, and the surgeon said, you better not ride horses anymore. So she didn't want to give up horses, so she looked into it and found miniature horses. And, Jim, honestly, when I heard the term miniature horse, I was thinking of some of these movies where you could put them on a table and they walk around. I had no idea what a miniature horse was. And they're not the way I would describe a miniature horse, if you saw a photo of one, you wouldn't know that it was not a real horse unless you had a person next to it. And by that, a miniature horse can be a lot bigger than others, but there's some that my 5-year-old daughter looks straight into their eyes, and she's actually taller than some. Some of them are if you could think of the smallest ones I've ever seen are 24 inches to their back, where their back comes.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the withers. But they go as high as tallest miniature horse is 38 inches to the withers. So basically, those are pretty good sized horses. And they're powerful driving horses too.
Really?
I love driving. I'd much rather. We have ponies and minis that we drive. I'd much rather drive than ride, and I do both. But driving is a lot of fun.
Huh?
And we've done. We've shown them, and we've gone to Tulsa. We've gone around the different parts of the country to show at national shows, and they have different age groups. And I'll just throw the number out because it's the number. As a family and with our horses, we've won 130 national championships.
No shit.
Yeah. No, I
had no idea.
Yeah, because but there are age groups there's 7 and under, there's
holy hell.
There's 8 to 12, and there's 13 to 17.
I had no idea.
Yeah, my kids have been all of them have won. Every kid I have has won a national title in their age group.
Wow.
And Mary and I have done. We've done pretty good too. But my youngest daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, is the only member of the family who has won a national championship in more than showing horses. She also has won 2. She was on the Viking Sparkle team, which was like a grade school team. They won 2 national titles this year, which was a big deal.
Wow.
So it's kind of she's the new superstar of the family, our youngest, the 5-year-old. So, but anyway, it is a lot of fun, and I welcome you to come out any time, because if you drove is jumping to jump a horse,
and define drive or drove.
Well, have you seen harness racing?
Yes,
it's like that.
Okay,
but in when you're driving though, it's not always it's not like the fastest one getting around the track. You're in an arena, and they have pleasure driving. You have to walk with the horse. You have
Tell
to
me it's like Gladiator.
Oh, I wish it was. They do have, by the way, that the class where you're riding around in the chariot too. They have chariot racing with miniature horses and ponies. And Mary, I tried it. It was all right. I like a class called Roadster, which is it's the closest thing to harness racing, where there's no walking, it's just speed. And the horses just fly around, and it's not the first one. It's just the one that looks the best. It's got the fastest and the best form that they have, and we're real lucky with that because we've got 7 different horses that have won national titles in Roadster.
Wow.
That's what we're known for, is Roadster and jumping. And jumping is basically you know what a lead line is on a horse?
Yeah.
Well, you run beside them and they jump, so it's a synergy, and it's all based on speed. And you would never know looking at me because I'm fat and old, but I've won.
Bob, you're not that old.
Well, I am fat, but I've won. I don't even want to know. I think it's 24 national titles over the years in jumping.
No kidding.
Because I go, and it drives these 18 and 20-year-olds nuts. Because you never know looking at me too that when I was a kid I was faster, but they take the long way. Like if you go past the jump, and people can't see this, but if this is a jump, they'll go 20 feet past the jump, turn their horse, and so they have a nice straight line. I stop at the jump because I'm too lazy, and I have my horse I just hold my arm out, and they come around and jump. I cut 7 to 4 seconds off. I've won classes by 7 seconds. And they go crazy because they say, look at this guy. How is he doing it? Well, because my horses are trained to do it. So anyway, That's enough about that. But we enjoy doing that sort of thing. And it's not something, this is the first time I've actually talked publicly about that because, on radio, people don't really care. They probably don't care in the podcast, and hopefully they'll come back so we won't be talking just about that. But anyone that wants to look into this, or enchantedhollow.org is our website for the horses. So take a look at it, enchantedhollow.org, and you'd see what I'm talking about.
Wow, no, that's fascinating. I did not know that about. I knew that you had horses and stuff like that, but I didn't know what you did with them.
And the ponies, when we show ponies, the ponies are, some of them you look at them and just say that's a horse, because a pony is they're pretty big, So when we show those too, and have done similarly have had similar success. But enough about me.
Well, no, it's good stuff. We will mix in a little current events now. You and I both have covered the Vikings as beat writers and as columnists. And let's face it, the overriding story of the day these days is Adrian Peterson. Of course, I'm sick of him. I'm not sick of the story because there's still a lot of meat on the bone. We still don't know what's going to happen. There's still fascinating possibilities out there. Just let's spin this forward, knowing that we're probably both going to be dead wrong. What do you think happens at this point?
I think each day that goes by, the likelihood of him staying increases because there was the flurry when free agency first began. But a lot of these teams, who has the money? Even if you redid his contract, he's not going to cut it down to a few million a year.
No.
I don't see how the Cowboys could ever fit him into there after getting Greg Hardy. I don't think they can. They were his best hope. Arizona made some moves. I don't think anybody has the money to take him on. And that's the reason why I think he's going to wind up staying with the Vikings. And I think we both know, too. If that is what happens, fine. You want to not show. You don't want to show up and play. You'll get fined. You won't get paid. He'll show up. Once he gets in the locker room with his and he does have a lot of friends on that team.
Sure he does.
It's really him against the front office and the ownership, which, again, is baffling, and I think we both may find it baffling, but try climbing inside the mind of Adrian Peterson. Somehow he's the victim in all this.
That's the sad thing. And, it's not the sad thing, it's the disgusting thing. He beats a kid, and all of a sudden he wants to have people feel sorry for him. It's pathetic. And it does lend you some insight into how some star athletes, and I call it the Princess and the Pea phenomenon, which is they are so revered. They're treated like gods by so many people. They're treated like celebrities by so many people. They have so much money. They have so many yes people around them. Everybody's telling them how great they are every minute of every day. I really do think they get to the point. It's like you watch the murder mystery where the murderer has pretty much convinced himself that he didn't do it, and he's able to beat polygraphs because he's convinced himself he believes he didn't do it. Well, I think some celebrities get to a point of arrogance where they can't imagine themselves, these godlike figures, ever having done anything wrong. Therefore, if they did something, it must have been the right thing.
Well, and because they are, as you say, they're surrounded by sycophants who enable them. Nobody in his inner circle is saying, Adrian, you really screwed up.
They might miss a paycheck if they say the wrong thing.
I mean, they're not going to do that. And this agent of his, this Ben Dogra, after hearing some of the things he said, I could see why Rob Brzezinski went at it with him. The guy must just drive people nuts.
Yes, absolutely. And I usually take it easy on the agent because the agent usually is carrying out the wishes of the client. But this one is particularly obnoxious. I will admit that. I tell you what, and from a journalism standpoint, one of the great things about going from being a beat writer to being a columnist is you don't have to talk to the stinking agents anymore.
No, you're right.
It's awesome. I love that about being a columnist. I don't have to talk to agents anymore.
And this guy, the thing about AP and this, I mean, what he did, reprehensible, what he did to that 4-year-old child that was hitting him with a switch. But see, he's done other things now that people's opinion of AP were going down from that, but it's not like he's built himself back up. By him throwing his wife under the bus, by saying, well, my wife, she really doesn't want to come back here. You know what, AP? Grow a set and say it's you. Because now you got your agent saying it. People aren't stupid. They know he doesn't speak unless you're telling him to do it. So why not just come out and say it yourself, I don't want to come back here. Yeah, and don't put it on your wife and don't put it on your agent. I mean, for a guy who seems to, he's got that machismo and he's so macho and such a man, then be a man and stand up and say, I don't want to play here anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of having these people doing it for you.
Adrian. Yeah. Let's hear it from you. You have the platform. Think about, too, in his position, he could call ESPN and they would send they would send a 24-hour crew to his house and do live reports for 24 hours on anything he wanted to say. So, yes, have some guts. We know he has physical courage. Let's see a little intestinal fortitude at this point. Tell us what you're really thinking. Stop hiding behind other people.
Yeah, and I say grow a few or grow a pair, but we know that he has with all those kids.
They're apparently functioning, and maybe even they might even be larger than Sam Cassell's. So we'll have to get the calipers out and figure that out. Now let's look at a slightly more positive aspect of Vikingdom. I thought at the end of last year, Bridgewater was playing as well as any young quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I don't think anyone played better of the rookies.
And I think what's happening now is the more time elapses from the end of the season, the more people dig into the metrics, the more people review film. I think more people around the country in our business and intelligent fans are recognizing just how well he played under adverse circumstances last year. You give him a better offensive line, which is almost guaranteed to happen. You give him real receivers, which now Charles Johnson and Mike Wallace, in addition to Jarius Wright and maybe Cordero Patterson, that's going to happen. Greg Jennings was not a good player last year. Kyle Rudolph was hurt, and I thought he was the key to their offense. And then either Adrian Peterson or McKinnon with a little more experience or a guy they draft, whatever. I think Bridgewater might be the breakthrough player next year.
Actually, as much as we've talked, if he has Peterson, there's no telling how much better a year he can have because defenses have to. There was nobody to respect in that back. Asiata,
no.
I mean, McKinnon got hurt and he was good, but I mean that's not a superstar. You put Adrian Peterson back there,
and McKinnon also fell off. I thought it was one of those things that happens with young players. Right about the time we started praising him, he stopped performing well. I remember that Bears game where they played so poorly in Chicago. He really had a terrible game. And he didn't really play that well after that point. He gave him like 3-4 nice games, and then he kind of hit the rookie wall, and then he got hurt.
The thing that amazes me about the whole Bridgewater situation is, and it's happening to Mariota to a point. He's not going to slide the way Bridgewater did, but he was considered the best quarterback when the season started. Really had a terrific season in college, and then he had a bad pro day. One day, that bad day is the reason he slipped to the final pick of the first round. Why these coaches, and you and I have talked about this, George Young was the first one to really verbalize it as a general manager. He built the Giants' first dynasty, or first good Super Bowl team. He's the guy that wanted Lawrence Taylor and drafted him second overall after George Rogers. He didn't care what they did in short pants and a T-shirt. He wanted to know, and that's why he cared so much about what happened on the field. They forgot all the film this kid put together and all the great games over one pro day. I don't understand it. And Mariota could suffer a little bit, but now it was sounding like he could slide. Now there's talk if he can go number 2 again. I don't know where it's going to end up when the draft finally hits.
You know, the amazing thing about scouts and general managers forgetting to pay more attention to the game tape than anything else is all you have to do is look at the NFL Hall of Fame. Joe Montana, not a strong arm, not a big. He was like 6'3", 6'4". He had a good frame, but he wasn't a big muscular guy. He was kind of a skinny guy with some athletic ability and kind of a weaker arm, and he was fantastic. Johnny Unitas couldn't move his feet. Okay?
He didn't get drafted.
He couldn't move his feet, and he didn't get drafted. Jerry Rice was not particularly fast in a straight line. Chris Carter was not fast in a straight line. Tim Brown was not as spectacular an athlete as many modern receivers. It's amazing how often they forget that it's not about raw athletic ability. It's not. It's like Jerry Rice. If you lined him up with, let's say the 6 best defensive backs of his era and asked him to run a 40-yard dash, he might finish last. But you put him on a field and have him catch a pass, and he's going to find a way to either outrun or outmaneuver all those guys.
One of the amazing statistics, and it's I don't know if did you get to meet Dave Huffman when you were here?
I was good friends with Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you know that Dave was drafted ahead of Joe Montana.
Yes.
He was a center in college.
He was a center, yeah.
And that's the thing. People, they forgot about what he did. I mean, he had a great Cotton Bowl. The things that he did in college, they ignored. Well, Brady didn't have as much tape as some other guys. However, he still was one hell of a, it was worth taking a chance on what they did. Now, Brady at the time, you could argue, shouldn't have been a first-round pick, but there are guys, they just let these guys slide. I want to give me a guy that'll win a game in college. That's what you got to look at, and Teddy Bridgewater did that.
Well, and look at Russell Wilson. I loved Wilson at Wisconsin. I didn't see anything from his play at Wisconsin that would keep him, and I'm on record saying all this stuff. You can go back and listen to this stuff. I didn't see anything about the way he played at Wisconsin that would prevent him from having success in the right offense in the NFL. Now, he wouldn't have success in a pure Peyton Manning drop-back system, or as much success, but the guy makes plays. He makes play after play. And now with Jimmy Graham going there, I bet he has a monster year.
Oh, God, it's going to be – with him, it'll be unbelievable. But he fell into the height. They wrapped him because he wasn't big enough or tall enough.
Tall enough.
But you're right, this is the difference between him and RG3. He's in an offense where even though he can run, he's not taking off all the time, but he can when he has to. Yeah. I mean, he's protecting his body, but he can throw the ball when he has to. He showed that until the very last pass of the Super Bowl.
Yes, and you know what? That wasn't even a terrible pass. If you go back,
it was a bad place to throw it.
Well, no, I disagree.
Why?
If you look at the route, he threw it right where his receiver should be. The problem was the receiver had been bumped off his route.
Well, I go back to the call that was made. He should have been rolling out, so he had an option to throw or to run or to he would have had more opportunities there.
I think any sane football coach would agree with this. You either roll him out, knowing that he makes great decisions and he'll just throw the ball in the fourth row of the stands if there's not something there, or you throw a fade to one of their bigger wide receivers, and where it's one of those passes you give your receiver a chance to catch it, knowing that if he doesn't, it's out of bounds or incomplete, whatever. Instead, they threw a very, those intricate plays on the goal line. If the right defense can screw things up. It's just like what happened. Browner played it perfectly. Browner disrupted the route, and then Butler made a genius play by jumping the route.
Now, did you see the other day that Pete Carroll is still gnawing at him? It'll haunt him the rest of his days.
He almost had 2 straight. I mean, how many NFL coaches have had 2 straight Super Bowl wins, and how many have done it in the era of free agency? Only Belichick, I think.
The one thing and Pete, I'm sure this is what's gnawing at him. I think they did panic a little bit because they just run the ball, then throw it, and then if you don't do anything there, then run again.
Well, here's the fascinating thing about that, because I ended up talking to people when I was at the Super Bowl, and they brought this up, and I ended up writing a blog about it at starttribune.com. You can probably still find it if you care, although I'm going to encapsulate it here anyway. Here's what happens, and it's a fascinating this is why we love sports, because there are so many unintended consequences from everything that happens that lead, you have these billion-dollar franchises playing in this game that's worth $1 billion all by itself, and these weird little circumstances dictate who wins the damn championship. If you remember, the ball bounces to, was it Lockett, I guess? The Seattle receiver, the ball bounces off it
was a great catch.
Butler's hands or whatever. Great catch. Well, it was such a moment of euphoria for the Seattle sideline that they didn't get the next play in right away. So then they have to burn a timeout. That cost them the game right there, because they burn a timeout. Now they only have 1 timeout left. So they're first and goal at the 9 or whatever.
Yep.
Next play, Marshawn Lynch runs it down to the 1, right? And here's what happens. Because they had to burn that timeout, Pete Carroll is thinking, okay, we're running it on first down. Belichick will call a timeout to save himself some time here so he can go back down and kick a tying field goal if he needs it. Belichick will call a timeout after Marshawn's first run. Then we can run it on second down, and Belichick will call a timeout. And then we'll run it on third down. We'll call a timeout. Then we'll run it on fourth down. We're going to get in, right? We're going to get in sooner or later. They're not going to stop Marshawn Lynch 3 runs from the 1. Instead, Belichick doesn't call a timeout. And Pete Carroll starts looking over the other sideline like, what the hell's going on? He's supposed to be calling a timeout. He's not calling a timeout. And Pete didn't want to burn his last timeout to run a second down play. So all of a sudden, the wheels are spinning, and they're going, and here's what Pete thinks. And I've had this from some people who know. He thinks, okay, Belichick's not calling a timeout. If I run the ball here, and I only have 1 timeout left, then I'm going to have to call a timeout to set up the third down play, and then Belichick will know I'm throwing on third down because I can't afford to run it on third down and have the clock run out. So he'll know I'm throwing it out. I don't want to have to throw against a Bill Belichick defense that knows I'm throwing.
And all this is going through his mind in a matter of seconds.
A matter of seconds, yeah. And that's why the play call on that sideline was like the last thing they thought of, because they had all these other worries going on. So they rushed the play call in. Okay, so I'm not going to give in to what Belichick's trying to force me to do. I'm going to call a pass play on this down, and that's why Carroll immediately after the game said, "Oh yeah, we were going to throw on second down and we were going to run it on third down." In other words, he expected it to be an incomplete. He expected it to either be a touchdown or incomplete.
Well, he called it almost a wasted play.
Right, he called it a wasted play because he expected it to be an incomplete pass that would set up 2 Marshawn Lynch rushes to win the game. Right. Instead, they called the inside pick play, which is what it was, and three amazing things happen. First of all, Brandon Browner does exactly what he should have done. He disrupts the pattern. He jams the guy, right? Instead of giving him a free release, which if he gives him the free release, if you look where Wilson throws the ball, it's a touchdown. He disrupts the play. Butler, and I talked to Butler for half an hour after the game, Butler said he had gotten beat on that play in practice that Wednesday, and Belichick had told him, okay, don't let that happen, you jump the route. So Butler, who had gotten sent in at the last second to be on the field because Belichick saw that the Seahawks were going to go to a passing formation, Butler comes on the field last second, recognizes the play, and makes a brilliant physical play to both knock the receiver out of the way and catch it, which is an incredible play. And all that happened, really, if you go back to it, because the Seahawks were forced to burn a timeout because they couldn't get the play call in after the spectacular catch.
And this is where another one of Pete's failings, though. He should have known that he's facing a coach in Bill Belichick who doesn't do it by the numbers.
Right.
And that was his big... I mean,
right.
Somewhere in all that things he's thinking, he should have taken that into consideration.
Right.
That he may not call a timeout, so I need to dictate what I'm doing and let the consequences be what they are.
And they could have handled it in a very simple way had they not anticipated Belichick calling the timeout. They could have just gone hurry up, lined up quickly, and run it again on second down, and then called a timeout if you needed to.
And that's what was so stunning about what he did, because most people seeing it, why are you throwing now?
Right.
When you have the timeout.
And he had a reason to do it. It just ended up not being a very good reason.
Well, I don't think he's lost some players, but he still is going to be right there at the end next year. He may be back for another Super Bowl. And I don't know that without Darrelle Revis and some of the things happening in New England, they may not be back.
I don't think they will. Wilfork and Revis were pretty irreplaceable to what Belichick wants to do. Now, he'll still be good because he's always good, but I don't think think that team would be great again.
And I do think with the move Seattle's made, they're going to have a much better chance of going back than New England will.
Because Wilson had a remarkable year, combined passing and running. Wilson had a remarkably productive year without anybody to really throw to.
And now he's got one hell of a tight end.
He's got a great tight end, which the way Wilson throws seam routes and the way Wilson likes to roll out, and you put Jimmy Graham like on the left and give him all that time to find open spaces and to run after the ball after the catch. I think they could be. I think they're going to be just as good, frankly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
And John Schneider, the old St. Thomas boy, is pretty good at finding hidden talent, which is why they're there to begin with. Let's talk about the Wild. We did a lot of hockey last night with Michael Russo, but the Wild are the dominant team in our town right now. And they're about to go into the playoffs, I believe. This is a big week for them. They have to win a couple games at home, but I still believe they're going to go in. Let me ask you a philosophical question from somebody who's been studying the local sports scene for a long time. And by the way, let me reiterate, we are at O'Gara's Bar on a Friday night. We're usually here at either 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on Friday nights at O'Gara's. There will be live karaoke, as there is every Friday night, from about 9 until the closing with I don't want to screw up the band name, but cool.
Hell of a band.
Cool band. Back room, the shanty. They have a blast back there. That's all sponsored by the Alive and Social Network, which is the network that owns this podcast and Jeff Dubé's and everybody else's. I want to thank O'Gara's, Guinness, Minnesota Eye Consultants, and all the other fine sponsors, including Cara Irish Pubs. And so here's my philosophical question. Are we this excited about the Wild because we should be, or because the rest of the sports scene is so depressed we latch on to whatever we can?
I think it's more of the first part than the second, because I do think that people are depressed about the rest of it. But this nationally, if this was another sport and not hockey, because there are hockey diehards.
Oh, and that's the thing. Hockey diehards would be going crazy about the Wild almost no matter where they were.
But
if
this was an NFL type story, if it was baseball. Right. It would, the NFL is probably the best example of it. It would be a huge national story. This team was in the crapper.
Yep.
At the 47 games in is when they played Buffalo, or 45 games in. That's Dubnik's first game. That's when it turned, just like the year before. What they've done since then is incredible. Best record in hockey, most goals in hockey.
Fewest allowed.
Yeah. I think they've set themselves up. The disappointment, this is not, they got to get to the Stanley Cup for this to be a worthwhile, and I think they should have to, people should now, the expectation is they win it. It's no longer like, well, geez, if the Twins could get over 500, that'd be great. Or if the Wolves can somehow find a way to get over 500, someday make the postseason to get excited, Gophers makes the NCAA. Nobody really would care as much if they did that and didn't win. Now, this team has a high expectation, I believe, or there should be a high expectation that they wind up winning. Good plug, by the way.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I think the proper expectation for this team should be winning a playoff series. And
one?
I would take just one. That would be progress.
Well, they're the best team in hockey.
They're the hottest team.
The hottest team is, you could argue that's the best team if you're the hottest team, and it's not like for 10 games. We're talking about almost half the season.
Yeah. I know, I get it. And they have been, there's no question they have been the best team in the NHL during that period. But, maybe I've lived in Minnesota too long. That almost lends a bit of a paranoia to me because, Nashville was the best team in hockey for a long time, but they couldn't sustain it. It's hard to sustain being the best team through this long, grinding 82-game season with all these back-to-backs. And as you see in hockey, often the best team isn't always the team that wins it. Quite often it's the team that gets hot at the right time, that has a great home ice advantage, that has a hot goaltender going in. And that's where you can argue for the Wild, is they have Dubnyk. But also they're going to enter the playoffs having played about 40 games that felt like must-wins, playing their goalie every single game. I almost expect them to win their first round, but I don't know if you can sustain it through all that playoff intensity, given everything they've been forced to expend to this point.
But with the other part of it, though, is here's a psychological edge they have. They know they can. They're resilient. They've shown that. But they have what have they won? 9 or 10 in a row on the road.
Yep.
Any series they go into, they're not going to be have home ice.
Right.
So they know, hey, we went on the road, we can do it. That's not a lot of teams have that problem. They know they're going to struggle on the road, and it's in their minds. These guys right now, they've been very successful in these next two games. Calgary and LA tonight. Calgary tomorrow night. LA. They win both those. One of those two teams is the only team that could give them any trouble for a wild card spot. They win over both these teams. I think they're pretty much they're almost a lock now. It looks like it, but. It's them in Winnipeg then. Right.
I really don't have any doubts they're going to make the playoffs because of the way they're playing. I mean, they just don't give up any goals. They just don't. And it's mostly Dubnyk in terms of improvement, but it's also they play a great defensive system. They have very responsible defenders. They have, Suter's exceptional, Brodin's exceptional, Spurgeon's very good. They have depth now. Fletcher's trades gave them depth. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. I would probably pick them to win the first round. Although, it's like Russo says, they could end up playing St. Louis, which traditionally gives them a lot of trouble, or they could end up playing Anaheim, which almost always seems to win one-goal games over them. So I'm just not sure. Here's what happened. The Wild has made it look easy for a long time, and it ain't going to be easy in the playoffs. It's just not.
I think what they need to hope is if they wind up as the first wild card, they have to hope that Anaheim has the better record than St. Louis or Nashville. I think they'd rather, because they've had success in this run they're having against St. Louis and Nashville.
They have,
but Anaheim, that would be one that would scare me if I were them in the first round. So they have to match it up so they wind up with St. Louis. If St. Louis or Nashville was the top team in their division, they want to face that number 2 team in the in the rankings or the ratings. They don't want Anaheim.
I think they'd match up well with Nashville. I think they've actually played St. Louis well this year. So I'm not sure they would have to.
They beat them twice in a week.
Yeah, I'm not sure they'd have to fear St. Louis, but that would be a slightly tougher matchup. Anaheim, I think, if you could inject truth serum into them, I think Anaheim would be the one that would bug them. Long flights and a team that has lots of playoff experience and just has guys who tend to make the clutch plays.
I don't anticipate this happening, but as of right now, they're 3 games behind Chicago. They get to that third spot, they're in great shape then.
Yeah, they could catch Chicago the way Chicago's playing, no doubt about it. Let's kind of wrap this up with some of the offbeat questions I asked my guests. I know I've asked you these before when I've had them on, but you'll come up with even more interesting answers this time.
Yeah.
Give me a current favorite movie. I know we talked about traditional favorite movies last time. Give me something you've seen in the last few months you liked.
What have I seen? Actually, one movie that comes to mind, and it got nothing for the Academy Awards, was the movie that Angelina Jolie directed about Louis Zamperini, Unbroken.
Yeah.
I really liked that movie, and it got nothing.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard good things about it.
That one was pretty good, and I expected it to get a lot of acclaim. I think there's a backlash against her in Hollywood.
Huh.
Because also
what a weird place Hollywood is.
It is, but many of the people who have the vote to nominate too are these not middle-aged, these old men who probably can't stand her.
Leave Sid out of this.
Well, that's true. He would have been there. I think he was there telling Edison, "No, do this." when he was making that first film.
Listen, asshole. I knew Leonardo da Vinci. This isn't the way Da Vinci would do it.
That would be him. That's absolutely right. But I did like that. And the other movie, I loved the movie about Chris Kyle. I thought that was terrific.
Yeah. I'll give an offbeat answer. Just
that was
something
Hero,
I've seen lately. Thank you for the Guinness. I appreciate it. What I saw recently, I tend to download some weird stuff and watch them on planes. Pearl Jam 20, their 20th anniversary documentary. It was really cool. Now listen, you got to like.
But you have
the
to
band.
like music, and you have to like the band.
You have to like the band, but even if you didn't like the band, one of the things I love about rock and roll, really any music, but particularly rock and roll, whether you're talking about Dave Grohl or Springsteen or Eddie Vedder or Pearl Jam or Kurt Cobain or whatever, is they didn't have to go. It wasn't like a kid who needed there to be a good youth soccer organization for him to have a chance, or a good baseball little league for him to have a chance. It's not really a coincidence that Mahler, Winfield, and Maurer and Matt Burke and all these guys, came up in St. Paul, where they're great youth sports and great coaches and great teachers, and Cretin, at high school. There are always ways for them to develop, and great sandlots for them to go play on. Rock and roll, it's like one guy in a basement listening to records, figuring out how to sing like that, singing into the mirror, playing, so many of these guys, if you read their biographies, they learned how to play guitar not from a teacher. They learned how to play guitar mimicking records that they had. And yes, they were records. They were actually vinyl back then. And they'd lift the stylus and put it back and listen to it again until they figured out how to play it. And I just think, and that's the great thing about a rock and roll documentary, is they show you all these kind of nerdy, geeky, outcast, slimy-haired guys, each in their own basement trying to figure out how to play an instrument, and all of a sudden they're one of the world's greatest rock bands. I just love that stuff.
Now let me ask, would you have to go to a vintage place maybe, where can you go to buy, not part of a stereo system, a record player? Like when we were younger, you would just go and buy a record player.
I think Electric Fetus.
They would have. Okay,
I'm pretty sure they would have one. Yeah,
because I've got all these vinyls too, that I don't know how to play them.
I've given all my vinyls to my kids who love that stuff, and my daughter loves vinyl. My son loves vinyl. There's a warmth to listening to an actual record, an album, that you don't get from digital music.
And you know what it is? It's like I told you when I walked into a garage, it reminded me of the bars where I grew up, and I would go like for dinner or something, and then they had a restaurant too, but there's that great smell. And that's what I had it. It was one of those, the olfactory senses that kicks back to when you're younger. And it's like that when I hear a record being put on with a little crackling. Yep. I mean, it brings you back to when you were young listening to records.
That crackle tells you something awesome is about to happen.
Yeah.
It really does. And digital music, I love the convenience of it. Of course I do. I have an iPod. I listen to digital music all the time. I'm not knocking it as a phenomenon. I'm saying that it's not quite. You know what? As a guitar player, it's kind of the same with guitars, too. It's like there are so many innovations that make guitars technically much better than they used to be. But then you pick up the 56 Fender Telecaster, and it sounds like nothing else in the world. There's something about just the purity of the old technology, the direct connection, that you don't get from more digital stuff. Just the way it is. Give me a TV show you like.
Big Bang Theory.
Okay, give me another one. I think we talked about that one.
We did talk about that. I mean, I go through the list at night. There's always seems to be a Big Bang Theory. Everybody Loves Raymond. You can find that. I love that. King of Queens, I like.
Everybody Loves Raymond is some of the greatest TV writing of all time.
It is.
It's phenomenal.
What's amazing about it is, for me, I didn't watch it when it was actually on. I missed it, their whole run until it went into reruns.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm in a cab. I can't remember what city it's in. I'm in a cab, and it was a weird deal. I think it was like Seattle or something. I get picked up in a cab, and it's like a husband and wife driving the cab. And we're driving around, and they're asking me, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a sports writer. I said, oh, you got to watch Everybody Loves Raymond. I said, why?
Ray Barone.
He said, oh, because the guy's a sports writer. I said, there's no way I'm watching a sitcom about a sports writer. There's no way they'll get it right. Nobody gets the media right in movies and TV shows. They all think you're either fans or that you're crazy people who chase ambulances down the street when we don't do any of that crap. And then I watched it. I said, this is great because it's not about him
No,
being
it
a
had nothing
sports
to do with
writer.
it. It was incidental.
It's complete. Basically, they gave him a job where he could hang around the house a lot, which also isn't true, but it's okay because it's a good device. But it's brilliantly written. Brilliantly.
You know what's amazing about him? He never covered a night game. He'd go on the road occasionally, very occasionally, and then bring his brother with him.
Right.
Which you can't do. But, I mean, he was never, where's Raymond? Well, he's at a night game.
No. Yeah.
And he was a columnist at Newsday.
Yeah.
And they did night games.
Yeah. It wasn't realistic, but it's okay. I appreciate the device. Yeah. It's all right. Give me a book you've read that you like.
Actually, I had, it's embarrassed to say, I had gotten away from reading books for a while, but two books that I read a book that it's an autobiography by Norman Lear, which is phenomenal.
Ooh.
Norman Lear, who created All in the Family and Sanford. I mean, he actually, when I think it was Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, gave away or honored the first batch of people from television. Lucille Ball, Milton Berle was in that. He was in that. The guy who invented television was in it. But he was part of that, too, because of what he did. I mean, at one point in the 70s, I think he had 7 of the top 10 shows on television.
And the thing was, he was a groundbreaker. All in the Family was about racial and ethnic and generational divides in our country.
Well, and I do reckon it's a terrific book. He's a great writer, and he's in his 90s, and he's still, very lucid and a terrific writer. But the one thing, you hear, you don't want to meet someone. It's not him, but I actually was, really? Carroll O'Connor did not want that role. He hated to be depicted. He was apparently he was like a Shakespearean actor.
No, he was. He was, and that's the thing. He had to lower himself to play that character.
And that was the thing too. He battled him on many scripts and said, "You got to do this." And he fought. Some of the best shows they had were the ones Carroll O'Connor was refusing to do initially.
I get it because he said some nasty in that character. He had to say some nasty, racist, horrible stuff. But the genius of that show was, and this is hard to convey to people who haven't seen it or didn't see it in the context of the times, but Carroll O'Connor somehow was a racist, bigoted, sexist pig, and yet the writing almost made you empathize with him just enough to keep watching the show.
Well, he had a benevolence to him, too.
He had a benevolence, and that's not to excuse any of the failings, but there was that's genius when you can make that character not sympathetic, but understandable almost.
Well, and some of the backstories that he gets into, like his relationship with Rob Reiner, who played Meathead.
Yeah.
What got him that job, basically, I mean, he thought he had talent too, but Carl Reiner and Norman Lear grew up writing together, and they were contemporaries as writers for early TV shows. And his son, Rob, treated his first daughter wonderfully. You know what I mean? They'd go over, and he would make sure that he'd play with her. He was older. But that's something he never forgot, and he basically launched his career. He had a great directing career. I mean, as an actor, he didn't do a lot as an actor, but he's made some movies, but he's a terrific director. I mean, when he made, I do think Norman Lear was involved in getting Stand By Me made, too. He's done a lot of producing, too, of movies. But I like that, and also I'm almost done with the book I referenced a few times about Billy Martin that Bill Pennington wrote. That's a terrific book, too.
Yeah, I'm going to have to put that on my list. Tell me about your podcast.
Well, actually, my wife and daughter had an idea to do a podcast about, basically, the working title is It's a Wonderful Life at the Ranch. It's about raising horses, raising kids, and how they often intersect and intertwine. And there's a lot of stories that we could certainly tell. And I do this blog, too, thebsblog.com, where I do some sports, but I try to talk about life. And I will say this, I was pulled almost kicking and screaming into the showing horses, but the thing I really learned about, and this is the stuff we'll talk about, this podcast is actually going to be broadcast first on KRWC, it's 1360 AM out of Buffalo, where we live, and then we're going to turn it into a podcast, and it's great that they're going to be working with us on it, but it'll be an hour show every Monday night starting April 6th, and we'll do it every Monday, and what I learned through horses is, if you go to a horse show, it absolutely is a microcosm of life. Because there are shows when we've gone to, I mentioned, all these, we've done, fortunately, all right, if we won 130 national titles, well, there's probably 930 classes where we didn't place. So we've had kids, and my wife and I, we've gone into a class. One class you win a national title. The next time you get the gate, which means you don't finish in the top 10. And that's what life is. There's ups and there's downs. And I've said that to my kids. That's the beauty of it. I'll give you. Do you have time for a quick example?
Yeah.
All right.
It's a podcast. We do whatever we want.
Right, my daughter, Samantha, now 19, she's the one I referenced earlier. When you show horses, miniature horses, and you jump them, I said earlier you run with them. Well, there's a class called Hunter, and there's a class called Jumper. Hunter has to be a steady pace, and you and the horse have to be in great synergy. Jumper is all speed. It's on the clock. But this Hunter class, I think she just turned 12. At 10, she finished third in the nation, and second as a 11-year-old, and as a 12-year-old, she's over third, second. I'm going to win this year. There were 60 kids in the class with their horses, so 120 life forms doing it, and they announced she won. She got a 4-foot-high trophy. She got the blue ribbon. She got a medallion, and she got this nice horse head. And it was like, to her, she said, "This is the greatest moment of my life." And then they get to the 7th place finisher, and they announced 7th place Samantha Sansevere. And I walk up, her brother, who's a couple years younger. I figured, well, they screwed up the name, Samantha Sawyer, my son Sawyer. And you get a number. When you show horses, you get a number, like 101 and 102. And I said they probably mixed up the numbers. And then as I'm just about there, I hear click. And then the microphone, we have a correction. The actual winner was Sawyer Sansevere. She had to give everything, the trophy, the medallion, the 4 things. She got the ribbon, the horse head, to her little brother. And it might have been better had somebody of the other 60 kids won. But she had to give it to her brother because he actually won the class. She finished 7th. And that's still great in a class of 60. But it's the toughest... at that point, it was the toughest thing my wife and I had to deal with because he had one kid who was almost inconsolable, and we're trying to tell her, don't fall apart in front of all these people. And then the other kid didn't know what happened. So I said to my wife, you stay with Sam, I'm going with Sawyer. So I had to take him to where they take a picture when you win, and he had no idea. So all of a sudden, he didn't really get his moment. You know what I mean? Because suddenly it's handed to him, and he... So the horse he has broke free and ran around the arena, so he had to go catch him. But she was devastated, and that night, I mentioned Jumper is speed. There's 2 different divisions in miniature horses. There's the under division, when again, it's based on where their back is, the last hair of their mane, 34 and under, and then there's 34 and over. And in the 34 and under, she had the fastest time, except on the final jump, she turned her horse in midair, and he knocked down the jump, so she didn't even place. And then in the final night, class night, and thank God for this final class, showing the horse that she finished 7th with and thought she won with, she won the class. So the night ended a lot better than it started because we didn't know how do you feel great for one kid and yet, oh my God, honey, I'm so sad for you. Hey, Sawyer, way to go. It was tough because you didn't want it was hard to give the proper attention to each kid.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's to make a short story long.
Well, you have a much more interesting life than I had imagined. Because I've known you for a long time, but I've never known all those details.
Well, I don't talk because I figured when I was on the morning show, nobody wanted me to take the time to tell about horses, and most people don't understand. The one thing I'll say about miniature horses, they are incredibly powerful. No one would imagine how strong these horses. Originally, miniature horses were bred down to take coal out of coal mines.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
That's because a big horse is not going to fit in these coal mines, and they had these horses that they were ponies, and they just kept going down, and that's where you see a lot of where miniature horses were bred down to. A lot of them probably originally came from smaller horses, but they were thoroughbreds. Some of these horses we have look like thoroughbreds.
Wow.
But they're just smaller versions of them.
I learned a lot today.
Well, you have to come out to the farm someday. EnchantedHollow.org. Give us a call. Come on out.
Well, I will come for a visit, which would break my rule of leaving Minneapolis only when I actually have to. But for you, I'll do it. Hey, Bob, I appreciate you coming out and doing this with me.
Jim, it was great. Thank you for inviting me.
And again, I joined Bob on his show on 105.1 The Ticket.
And 3 and 7.
FM, and 3 and 7.
105.3 and 105.7.
105.1, 105.3, 105.7. The Ticket at 3:30 every weekday afternoon. Bob will probably pop on with me every once in a while on the podcast. Again, we are at O'Gara's Bar on a Friday night. Live karaoke coming up later in the Shanty, which is the big garage-like building out back. Thanks to Guinness, thanks to Minnesota Eye Consultants, thanks to Cara Irish Pubs. I will be, usually I do either Kieran's or the local on Mondays. I'm going to be on vacation next week, so we're either going to have Michael Russo sub for me, or we're going to run one of my interviews from spring training. That'll be Rob Anthony or Terry Ryan or Doug McCabe, somebody like that. Thanks, as always, for listening, and we'll be talking to you soon.